Pocosin Planning Commission, Monday, April 19th. And we do have one discussion item on our work session, and that is a discussion of potential code amendments. So I will turn it over to Wally.
And can I go ahead, or do you have something?
Oh, just ignore me. I'm just messing.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. What I tried to do with this last submission of these definitions is to start to build what I think we all recognized, particularly during the legacy hearings, was a bit of a struggle with how we define landscaping, how we define naturally wooded buffer, basically how we define a lot of similar things. So what I've done, you can kind of think of a buffer as the sort of the big circle that covers everything. Naturally wooded buffer is a little more restrictive because you're talking about preserving naturally wooded buffer that's there. Landscape, combination of lawns, trees, plants, and other natural materials such as rock and wood chips installed as prescribed in this ordinance. I guess that would actually be number 2. Your buffer, landscape, then your naturally wooded buffer. Then lastly would be your enhanced landscaping. And what we're saying for enhanced landscaping is that we're looking for you to preserve the trees and the buffer that's already there. But where there are gaps, we want you to go in at a rate of 1 canopy tree, 2 understory trees, and 3 small shrubs per 400 square feet within that area. So, you know, to actually beef up the pre-existing buffer. Now, landscape enhanced is something that we use a lot. You might remember Legacy said that in exchange for going down to 25 feet on the front, they would plant an enhanced landscaping buffer. We've never defined what that is. So it seemed like to me what we're really talking about is, you know, keeping the woods within that 25-foot area. And I'm using Legacy as an example because this is a segue into the planning and development discussion. And then augmenting it with plantings where you have a gap. So that's really the idea. And of course, we have to define all this stuff. So large shrub is a shrub that reaches 10 feet or greater in maturity. Small shrub up to 10 feet.
You might want to, on that small shrub, make it a plant instead of woody plat.
Oh, yeah, a woody plat. Yeah, it's a woody plant. Thank you for that. Tree. Tree is a wooded plant that either is deciduous or evergreen, understory tree or deciduous or evergreen, canopy tree. Then we break it down into a canopy tree, 35 feet in height or larger when mature. Deciduous tree, a tree that sheds its leaf each fall. Evergreen keeps its foliage for more than one growing season. We define understory tree, and because we used the term woody ground cover, I went ahead and defined that. We also use wooded plants in one of our definitions at the top. And because we already mentioned trees, we only really need to mention the small shrubs and large shrubs. Let me see where that comes from here. Yeah. But, oh yeah, a buffer consisted of preserved trees and other preserved wooded plants. That's under naturally wooded buffer. So I went ahead and defined wooded plants, just in case anybody wanted to look at what we meant by that. My ultimate goal is to make sure that we're never again faced with a situation where somebody calls grass landscaping.
Oh, what?
Calls exclusively grass landscaping. That's what we're trying to get away from.
Okay. Well, are you ready for questions?
I'm sure.
Under enhanced landscape, you have to fill in gaps with expanses per 400 square foot unit. What if it's less than 400 square feet? I'm assuming you're talking about like a a line of trees, and all of a sudden you have a break in the line of trees,
Okay.
how is that 400 square foot calculated, and what do you do if it's less than 400 square feet?
That's actually a good point. If, let's say it was 200 square foot, so you can't have a half canopy tree, but you could round it up to one. 2 understory trees, we would half that because that's half the area. 1 understory tree, and 3 small shrubs per 400 square feet would round up to 2, 1.5.
Wouldn't it be better to, in my opinion, to clarify exactly,
Yeah.
and I'm interested in knowing if I'm going down the road and I see this long line of trees and all of a sudden there's a break in the trees, it would seem to me that you would be interested in filling in that gap based on the width and length of the gap, as opposed to determining 400 square feet. I mean, is it 100 by, 40, or is it,
So, I mean, we could approximate the area with something like GIS, for example. I mean, we could very easily approximate the area.
I mean, what if you're looking at a 20 by, 10, if it's a 10-foot strip and it's a 10-foot gap? You're talking about 100 square feet, or a 20-foot gap and a 10-foot in length.
Right.
I think that's too ambiguous, personally.
Well, I mean, I think what we do is we put something in here that talks about how we would round up in areas that are less than 400 square feet. We would round up to the nearest.
And how are those
nearest
areas
number.
measured? I mean, how would they be measured? And when you say 400 square feet, we're looking at length, width. So how would you measure the length and the width of the gap, so to speak?
Measure the area of the gap that's between the trees, not necessarily by width and length, but by the entire area. So,
The entire area, meaning?
yeah, I mean, you might have 600 square feet, you could have 400, you might have 100, but that's how we'd measure it.
600 square feet where within that gap is what I can't quite wrap my head around.
The area of the gap itself.
So you're saying then that it might be wider than what the buffer already is what you're going to determine that 400 square feet from?
Within the 25-foot buffer, let's take the length, okay? Within the 25-foot buffer, if there are areas within that 25-foot buffer that are not planted, which currently I don't think they're all, it's all naturally wooded, but let's say that there was, you would take that bald area, if you will, and you would look at the area. I mean, whether it's...
In other words, if the buffers are 25 feet, you're going to be measuring 25 feet as the width, and the gap is whatever the length is going to be, times 25. Is that correct? No more than 25.
Well, I would measure no more than 25, no.
I'm sorry?
I would measure no more than 25, you're right.
Okay.
Because that's the only part of the area that's denoted as a buffer.
I'm with you. Thank you.
On the, on the buffer, how about fences? Say you got an old piece of property and they got a fence on it. Or one subdivision or the adjoining properties has a fence up. What you're saying is that there's no structures or paved surfaces.
Right. Which separates the development from adjoining properties.
I mean, that's what a fence does generally.
That is what a fence does, but in several areas of our zoning ordinance, the planned open space development and the PUD, it actually calls for a buffer, not a fence, but a buffer. So we're talking about an area.
Yeah, but you're talking about existing areas, and if that area has a fence in it, I can understand that if it has a, like, say you had a buffer from way back when in the legacy thing, and you say, well, you can't have that there because it's a buffer, so you get rid of the structure. And what if you have fences there? I mean, it's purely nothing but wooded area. What you're trying to tell me?
Well, we've defined it right now as the area in which no structures or paved surfaces are present. So the fence, if there's a pre-existing fence, I guess we could dicker over that. But the idea of a buffer with a new development would be that there would not be a fence. You'd be relying upon the buffer itself to separate the uses.
Oftentimes you'll see brick buffers, like brick fencing. For instance, like at Running Man as an example, you'll see You know, that waving brick fence, I don't know how tall it is, but would that not be acceptable as a buffer? Something like that?
Well, that would be a possible offering that any other developer who would do a PUD, whether it's mixed use or waterfront, that would be something that they might go before the city council with as part of the original set of modifications in a plan, kind of like Legacy did the first time around and back again. I mean, that might be something that they offer instead of a buffer, but a buffer is a physical separation between, it's not really a fence, it's not really a brick, it's a width of an area.
I'm at a buffer of land,
yes,
as opposed to a structure, but I'm just saying, would not I guess what I want to make sure is if a buffer says no structures or paved surfaces, and somebody wanted to come in and put a fence in, like, say, example, Running Man, you're saying that would not be acceptable by this definition?
Not the way our ordinance has
Okay.
looked at buffers.
I mean, is that something that we want to exclude?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. And we could put it before the board. I will say one thing, if we start looking at buffers at fences and brick walls, though, it's going to be a pretty radical departure from what we've done in the past.
A departure, is that what you said, a radical departure?
A departure, yes, ma'am.
I'm just asking, I mean, that can be a very attractive landscaping item is all I'm saying, and it can be very attractive when it's being used up against a very heavily traveled road, like going out on Victory. So I'm just thinking,
I think we might want to make some exception for that under the definition of landscape. That would be more appropriate under there, where if somebody wanted to use fencing for landscaping instead of a combination of lawn, trees, and plants and other natural materials, that would probably be the place to put that in. I mean, there's several things you can do in lieu of landscaping. You can do like winding walks.
I don't think,
you can do
I personally
fountains.
don't think fences should be excluded because they do have some sound protection as well. And on a heavily traveled road, that can be very important. I think it should be included in some realm. Maybe not as the buffer, I don't know, but.
I get you.
Would the planning commission consider a definition of buffer in which no buildings or paved surfaces are present be an improvement? Because
Yeah.
we define buildings as like enclosed space, so that would allow for fences and also things like drainage swales, things like that. But you wouldn't be able to build like a shed in the
Right.
buffer.
No, I would agree with that. I just think there are
So if
times.
we said we needed a 40-foot buffer, we would be saying an area in which no building or paved surfaces are present, which separates a development from properties. I think that would work.
Yeah, well, I guess one of the frustrations I had with the legacy discussion was the actual measurement of the buffer.
Yes.
It gets to a point where the viability of trees is very marginal if you're looking at 5 back. And I was quite concerned, that's when we were discussing. I mean, anyone who grows a tree knows that a tree needs to have a healthy environment. And so,
It does.
when we, and first of all, I appreciate you doing this. We did struggle with that, and we didn't have any leverage or frame of reference, shall we say, when we were discussing these points. But I think the next step on this, once we've got the definitions down, is to really look at the viability of the actual measurements of the buffers. Because if we're to promote a sustainable community, I think the science is out there that trees certainly enhance not only the beautification but are so important for the drainage, particularly in our area.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you're getting at. We had one buffer that they put down to 5 feet in order
Right.
to allow for, I think,
I
the
mean,
cul-de-sac.
you know, an existing tree and a 5-foot buffer
Well,
is
a
not.
5-foot buffer, you're right, you don't, and that's one of the reasons why I've used this 400 square feet, however you measure the area, because a canopy tree really needs about 130 square feet in order to grow up, to be healthy, allow for the roots to spread out, allow for the crown to fully develop, and that sort of thing.
Well, in that case, a fence may have been a more appropriate,
Right.
at that 5-foot buffer than
Exactly.
anything else.
I think you're probably right about
Yeah.
that.
I mean, it got to be, to me, sort of almost ridiculous.
But if you put a
Trees
fence
for
in there,
5
then I
feet.
think it has to be defined.
Yeah.
Well, I think Dannon's on the right track when he talks about the buffer, just maybe instead of saying structures, if we say buildings, because buildings are enclosed with walls and whatnot.
So is the intention, you know, once we've sort of discussed this, is to look at the measurements, actually, what type of.
Well, I mean, we can look at some examples, but certainly with Legacy and their buffers, they would have had the capability of telling us the areas. You know, we would have, that would have been an addition to their landscape plan, which.
Hard buffer to 5 foot to allow for that
They
cul-de-sac
did
or
the
something?
amendments, and the amendments were approved. Now, that's another thing, as we get past these definitions, we need to look at the language where it states, you know, when city council can make modifications, changes. That's on down the line, but I just kind of wanted us to think about these terms first, because that was a major issue when we were looking at the modification.
You know,
A
one
year and a
thing,
half ago.
I think it's good to have a definition, so say a developer comes in and wants to know what the heck you're talking about, at least he has an understanding of the, what you're looking at. And so to have these on there is a good reference for him to understand. As far as, you know, requirements and everything else, they're gonna come to you based upon the plat of the land and everything else, and that will be discussed, I guess, but.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to
One
the
thing is
exact
a
widths.
guide, the other one is a requirement. One of them, you get very specific as far as requirements with 400 square feet. That no longer is it's more of a requirement rather than a, you know, under a definition.
Well, it is, but I'm also defining it, it's a little bit of both. But, yeah, I got what you say, but it wasn't meant to really be a requirement. It was just kind of fleshing out what we meant.
I know what you're trying
by
to do
enhanced
is
landscape.
define what is open, and you're trying to keep grassy areas not as a buffer, but something there that hides the eyesight or whatever you want to call it.
Well, maybe
it's
we
just that
could
it gets
change
further.
the language to be more definitional instead of more
Yeah, I think you need to do
requirement-based.
that.
I think that is a good idea.
And Wally, I have another comment too, where you're requiring, saying one canopy tree, a canopy tree being 35 feet in height or larger. I mean, you're talking about some significant sized trees that can create a lot of havoc in an area. I mean, you know, you talk about an oak tree, I mean, maybe not in your lifetime or my lifetime, but they can grow pretty big and pretty tall. And I think that the city experienced that coming with the trees that we had going down With Creek Road.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just wondering, is 35 feet and higher capturing what we're trying to do with that? And aren't we looking for it to be more of a screen than a 35 or 40, 50-foot tree? And
I think we're looking eventually for it to be a screen, and of course, we all know bigger trees are more beneficial than smaller trees. And certainly, we would want them to be able to reach their maturity. That's why I say it's more apropos for that to be in the area of a buffer than it is necessarily for, you know, 10-foot strips, which.
But if
Now,
we're getting into a 5-foot strip like we have at Legacy, and somebody has to put in a 35-foot tree, I mean, that just makes no sense to me at
Well,
all.
we said buffer, remember, we said buffer, and one of your ideas, which was a really good one, was to make the definition of a buffer inclusive of a fence or brick, and in an area of a 5-foot buffer, you're absolutely right. Planting a canopy tree in there, you're just asking for trouble. So why not put a fence or a brick wall or something in there? That.
Well, I'm looking at the definition here of enhanced landscape, and I just think to require a tree that grows 35 feet or taller is not accomplishing the purpose of landscaping in general, because it.
Well, I hear you. Remember that enhanced landscaping is a special type of landscaping. Most areas in the ordinance, we're going to be looking at the definition of landscape.
Are you speaking, I interpreted this as a pre-existing buffer would have existing trees.
Yes.
Canopy, is that
No,
what
you're right. There would be pre-existing trees.
That's the
yes.
interpretation. You don't have to plant a tree that's going to become, 35 feet. Existing within the buffer, then you can retain.
If you've got a wooded pre-existing buffer,
Yeah.
and you've got a gap, let's just say it's 400 square feet, just happens to fortuitously be 400 square feet, you would need to plant one canopy tree in that gap. You would plant 2 understories and 3 shrubs, but it's already a pre-existing wooded area. So, I mean, you're not really going to be interfering with anything there.
Well, let's assume though that wooded, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. Let's assume that pre-existing wooded buffer are 25-foot shrubs like red tips, for instance. And then you're going to require to go in the middle of it a tree that grows 40 feet or 50 feet, anything over 35 feet. I just don't think that makes sense to me. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, we could toy with the, we could say, instead of one canopy tree, we could say, and 2 understory trees, we might say 300. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing that out there, and maybe an extra shrub in it.
Or a combination thereof,
or some sort of combination. The way I kind of look at it, it's like a point, almost like a point system. A canopy tree is 130 square feet. Understory is 90 square feet. And a shrub is 30 square feet. However you get there, I mean, I think that's the main thing we're looking at. However you get to that 400 square feet, or, roughly approximate. I mean, that's really what we're talking about.
To me, it's just, I don't know. I personally don't like the way that it's worded, because I think it's not,
I strongly
it's so
thought about it.
restricted that if it were to be put in place, and there's no variation of that, it just seems to me, I don't know. And I don't know how you word it, and I know that's what you do, but to me, it seems like you have to use some common sense as to if it's a 10-foot gap versus a 20-foot gap versus a 30-foot gap. The plantings, in my mind, should be or could be different for those different types of gaps, and to be so specific. I don't know that is the. I don't know.
That formula is actually taken from the Department of Environmental Quality. I think there's certainly ways to tailor it based upon the character of and that's really what you're talking about.
Existing character.
It's the character of the existing vegetation.
Right.
And I think that, I think we could reword it to be a little more,
you kind of know my
explanatory,
concerns, so I'm just throwing that back at you.
no, I think I know where you're going with that, so.
Can I make a suggestion? Based on my experience with past tree boards, there's a thing called right tree, right place. And I think that could be a good addition, is using the right tree, right place formula. So you don't plant a tree that grows super tall under utility lines, and you don't plant trees that grow super big in a small curb lawn. So it would be the same kind of practice.
Is there a definition for that, a specific?
I can see if there is.
That's a good point.
But that could be something that we could add that would make sense.
I think that's the idea that I was trying to get at.
Erin actually did a lot of work in her former place of employment with parks and trees and that sort of thing, so.
The other piece that I'm really interested too is actually trying to promote native trees. Forestry Department Service has really good public, trying to promote native trees. The advantage being that they are acclimated to the local conditions. So I'm always sad when these new developments go in and the homeowner is usually pushed to the limit, and landscaping's usually the last they can afford to put into a house,
Yes.
or even a developer. And they'll go and they'll buy something from the local nursery. It's been proven that native trees have so many other benefits. I don't know if that could be something that we could
It
consider.
absolutely could.
We don't want to mandate it, obviously, but I think we can encourage. Comprehensive plan talked about a sustainable community. I look at the longleaf pine, which Pocosin was really renowned for from its boat building, and just from a historical standpoint, the little grove of longleaf pine that are thriving down at the Pocosin Museum is just a wonderful, I think, regeneration of an ancient tree that
Sure.
dominated the landscape of Pocosin. I think it would be sort of kind of a unique sort of piece that we could perhaps,
I would agree with you. I think
you know,
we can definitely include
that this is a
native trees.
very hardy wood, it's sustainable. We're lucky, you know, it probably could last for 100 years, so it's
Mm-hmm.
growing, you know, certainly long past when. But it could be something that we could, you know, maybe.
I agree. We actually, in our site plan ordinance, we have some trees that are forbidden, but they're not necessarily not native trees. There might be other objectionable things, such as the fruit yield. But I think we can focus on things like native trees. I think that would be,
Just having a resource of if people are, you know,
yes.
approach community development of, you know, what would they suggest?
Yeah, there's a wonderful book,
Suggested,
and that
like,
might be
to
the same
your
one you're
point,
looking
Aaron,
at.
you know, right tree, right place. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, so being a little bit.
Well, that's why we're here tonight, to take these wonderful ideas and try to make this better, so.
And then Wally, did you say that it would be in the site plan, or it would be in the ordinance, whether it was landscape or landscape enhanced? Would it be,
Yes.
okay,
Yes, landscape enhanced is something that's used a lot in the PED language. You don't really find it anywhere else in the ordinance, but, you know, what does that mean compared to regular landscape? I mean, there's a part of me that said, well, let's just get rid of the whole landscape enhancement altogether. But I was trying to kind of still make it work. But, I mean, we talk about enhanced landscaping, but we never say what it is. I mean, is it an extra row of trees? Well, then, have you left enough room for them to grow? And, you know, that sort of thing. But, which is, and I'm kind of going as an aside here, but you'll notice a lot of cities, a lot of counties, they have like plantings 30 foot on set, canopy trees, and they talk about the number of shrubs and understory trees. Based upon everything I'm reading, that's unrealistic numbers to expect them to actually grow to maturity. I mean, it, you know.
Wally, do we really need to have landscaped and enhanced landscaped? Is that something we really need?
Well, it's kind of something I was struggling with a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point. I'm not so sure that that's something that I would anticipate. For me, enhanced landscaping would be something that maybe a developer would proffer to, you know, they're trying to get something, so they can persuade the city, if you let me do an enhanced, meaning I'll add 20 more trees or 20 more bushes or whatever the case may be, if you'll allow, say, for instance, that 5-foot buffer that was amended as an example. So the developer would proffer that he would be willing to provide, you know, an enhanced landscaping of bushes and shrubs and fencing or whatever the city may want for exchange of allowing him to have that, say, reduced buffer. And so rather than describe enhanced as being so specific, I think it could be left as something that they may want to proffer.
And then they would have to definitively say what they.
Right, right. Y'all, y'all could look at it and tell if it means above and beyond the normal landscaping.
Well, if we got rid of enhanced landscaping, we would essentially have the definition of landscape, which is the combination of lawns, trees, plants, and other natural materials. Maybe we don't grow out the rock and the wood chip. I don't know, but.
And I think that should include fencing, landscaping. I think fencing is a very attractive
Well, we talked about fencing.
part of
and
landscaping, yeah.
Definitely.
I just think this other is, I just
I
don't.
think what we meant when we used landscape enhanced in the case of Legacy, and I'm not trying to pick on Legacy, but they're really the only UD development we've had. I think what we meant there was more trees. I think that's essentially what we meant.
Did they throw that out, the enhanced landscaping?
They said enhanced landscaping
Okay,
when
so-
when they went through the city council the first time.
So what did they mean by, I mean, what was their description of enhanced versus?
They never defined it. They
Well,
just
that's what I'm
said,
saying. I don't know that we want to get so specific here. I think that's something that the city should come back and say, okay, well, what do you propose? Tell me what you got on your mind for this gap. There's got to be some sort of gap landscaping. Tell me what you have in mind, rather than being so specific. It has to be 2 understory trees and 1 canopy tree and blah, blah, blah. I just,
Well, Wally, this was a good introduction. I know
It's a
we're
good
out of time for
start.
the work session, so.
it's a start, and I know
Yeah.
we're running out of time on the work session.
Thank you.
But I will,
Thanks for all your
I'll
hard
be
work.
coming back with, other stuff.
okay.
All right, and we are past time, so we are going to call to order the Pocosin Planning Commission for Thursday, April 19th. And we will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance, and we will say the Lord's Prayer for the invocation, if you would like to stand and join us as you would like.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Today our daily bread, and forgive us of our debt. Us from evil, for thine is the kingdom, the
Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. We had both a work session and a regular session for minutes. And is anyone prepared to make a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
We go ahead and have a roll call.
Commissioner Stevens?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Abstain.
Commissioner Grievel?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shriver?
Aye.
Chairwoman Emmett?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I just noticed one slight correction. They got me present as absent than I was present. That's
Okay.
All right. And I guess I should have probably separated those, huh? The work session and the regular session. Okay, so that would be for the work session.
Okay.
And do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular session?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Commissioner Stevens?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan? Commissioner Grievel?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shriver?
Aye.
Chairwoman Emmett?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next on the agenda, we have an audience for visitors. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the Planning Commission for any reason other than items that are on the public hearings. And I will now open up the floor for an audience for visitors. And as I see none, we will go ahead and move on to the next agenda topic, which is public hearings, which we have 3 of them today. The first one is amendments to Article 1, Section 1-3 of the zoning ordinance regarding the definition of farmers markets. And if you would like to present on that, Dan, and thank you.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. So this will be a sort of a combined presentation for these next 2 public hearing items, as they do kind of go together. But they have been separated out into 2 separate amendments, just in the sake of clarity. So we are talking to amendments to the zoning ordinance, Appendix A of the City Code, Sections 1-3 and 10-2 regarding farmers markets. So some background, the Pocosin Farmers Market was approved back in October of last year through a conditional use permit process. At the time, the Planning Commission and city staff noted that our existing definition of farmers markets was very restrictive and very narrow and did not encompass all of the retail and handicraft uses that the farmers market was endeavoring to have, and therefore we decided we would like a better definition, maybe some changes to go along with that. So we discussed in 2 work sessions on January 21st and March 15th, and the language that I am presenting tonight is basically what was agreed upon at the last work session as appropriate changes to be made. So the first would be changes to Sections 1-3, which is the definitions section of our zoning ordinance. The change that I'm proposing tonight is to remove the existing definition, which is this. This is the existing definition of farmers market, which again is very restrictive, does not cover any kind of retail or handicraft or any other uses other than explicitly basically bringing in truck farmers and selling their produce. We would then replace that definition with this, which is the definition of an open air market. This contains language from several of our neighbors, including Gloucester and James City County and York County. The definition would read, open air market, an occasional or periodic market where temporary stalls or tables are erected in an open area and where 1 or more individuals offer goods for sale to the public, including farmed produce, seafood, handicrafts, antiques, and other retail goods. This definition shall not be construed to include sidewalk sales by retail merchants, bake sales, or garage or yard sales, held in conjunction with and incidental to residential uses, or sponsored and conducted by religious, civic, or charitable organizations on their own developed property. So this would definitely cover the Pocosin Farmers Market and any other market that would like to operate like them in the near future. So going along with this change, the content of the next public hearing item would be changes to the B2 zoning district uses, so permitted and conditional uses for B2, which is our business and commercial district. This is the only section of the code where farmers markets are mentioned, so we would need to change that if we are proposing this new definition. So the first change would be to the permitted uses. The outdoor display of seasonal items is allowed currently when it is accessory to a primary commercial use, as a primary use by a civic group, or by a farmer's market. And we replace market with fruit or produce stand. As I explained in the last work session, this is a change to allow the spirit of this current language, where a singular farmer could set up a produce stand or a farmer's market stand in order to sell their produce, but not create an entire farmer's market. We feel that would be better suited as a conditional use, and so we would simply change that line. In the following section, conditional uses, we would remove flea markets, which are not defined by our current ordinance, and replace it with open air markets. So they would be permitted as a conditional use in the B2 district, and would also be allowed as a conditional use if deemed appropriate by our Planning Commission and City Council. But with that, I'll be happy to take any questions that you have.
I don't have any questions. I think the definitions you have are something that we have ironed out over the last couple of sessions, and pretty much what I expected.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's no way to do this.
I feel really, really pleased. Discussions over the last 2 work sessions have really nailed it, so good job.
Well, I can't take all the credit because most of it is cribbed from York County and Gloucester, so.
It's work, though. I do have one question, is that, and it doesn't, I know we're talking about definition here, but is there a permit required or to have a open air market?
It would be with these changes. So in the B2 district, it would be a conditional use, and with the current interpretation of our zoning ordinance, in any other district, you could apply for the same conditional use permit for an open air market.
So it would be the cost of the conditional use permit rather than a set fee in the...
Correct.
Okay.
So there is no by right in any zoning, is that correct?
That's correct. And with that, we do not have any set conditions for farmers markets, as we have never really had official farmers markets applied for, but we did attach conditions to the previous one, the Pocosin Farmers Market, and those were what we would probably look at if we were ever to receive a new application for one.
And you guys included correspondence from an existing applicant, and it sounded very positive. It was good feedback, so really good job. All right, and at this time then, I will open up a public hearing for item 1 for the amendment to Article 1, Section 1.3 of the zoning ordinance. And at this time, I see no one wanting to join in the public hearing. So any other consideration by the commission? Is anyone prepared to make a motion about the amendment?
I'll make a motion that we accept the amendment -3 of the zoning ordinance regarding the definition of farm written as presented to us tonight.
Commissioner Stevens?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Kriebel?
Aye.
Commissioner Pennington?
Aye.
Commissioner Shriver?
Aye.
Chairwoman Emmett?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
That leads us to item number 2 under the public hearings, the amendment to Article 10, Section 10-2 of the zoning ordinance regarding farmers markets as a permitted and conditional use in the B2 zoning district. Is there anything else you would like to add to that?
No, it's the same changes that I have just outlined, but I would just say they are considered together. So if you have passed the previous one, it would be a great idea to pass this one.
At this time then, I will open up the public hearing for item number 2, the amendment to Article 10. At this time, I don't see anyone wishing to address the Planning Commission, so I will close the public hearing. And we will open up consideration by the commission if anyone would like discussion or if you are prepared to make a motion.
Prepared to make a motion to accept the amendments to Article 10, Section 10-2 of the zoning ordinance regarding farmers markets as a permitted and conditional use in the B2 zoning district as presented to us tonight.
Commissioner Stevens?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Kriebel?
Aye.
Commissioner Pennington?
Aye.
Commissioner Shriver?
Aye.
Chairwoman Emmett?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item number 3 under public hearings is an amendment to the terms of a conditional use permit for Victory Church to operate a farmer's market at 0 Victory Boulevard, tax map parcel 18-1-121, zoned R&D Research and Development. Would you like to present on that, Danny?
Just very briefly. Yep. All right, so this is an amendment to the previously approved conditional use permit for the Pocosin Farmers Market. As I said, this was approved by City Council in October of 2020. It is a farmers market for vegetables, fruits, and various other home-style items, in the applicant's own words. Since we are recommending these changes to the zoning ordinance regarding this new definition of open air markets, we feel the CUP should be updated to reflect this definition. The existing CUP is for a farmer's market, and so if we are undefining farmer's market and then adding a definition for open air markets, it would be appropriate to update the CUP to reflect that. But all the approved conditions would remain the same. So the only changes that we would be making would be to remove the language farmer's market in 2 sections of the CUP and replace it with open air market. And as seen in your packet, the applicant was notified by me about this change back in March and was very supportive of it. But with that, I'll happy to take any questions you have.
More of a procedural change than anything else, really.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problems with it.
I like the fact that you included adequate off-street parking because of the location.
And at this time, I will go ahead and, thank you, Dannon, and open up the public hearing on the amendment to the terms of conditional use permit for Victory Church. And at this time, I see no one who wishes to speak at the public hearing, so I will close that. And we will have consideration by the commission. If anyone would like to discuss, or if you're prepared to make a motion, please do.
Just the denial is in the Resolution B denial section. That is because we're denying the original one and approving the new one. Is that why I see a denial in there?
I believe it would be denying the changes proposed tonight. That's the way it's worded.
I was surprised to see it.
It's just to give you the option of, if you approve it, then you're basically looking at Resolution A. If you, for some reason, deny it, then you would be basically making the findings of Resolution B. It's just, it's something we try to include in every packet that we send.
Okay, but we're really just here to, at this point, approving the name change, and they still have the conditional use permit. I'm just surprised to see it, that's all.
Any other discussion? Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve this change to the conditional use permit for Victory Baptist Church.
I'll second it.
Aye.
Commissioner Romans?
Aye.
Commissioner Greenwald?
Aye.
Commissioner Fenningston?
Aye.
Commissioner Frymer?
Aye.
Chairwoman Emmett?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. That concludes our public hearings. We do have an agenda item for new business, which is a presentation of the updated zoning map.
Yep, so some of you may know that we do have an online GIS map that we publish and update on a somewhat regular basis. That is our go-to source for information on parcels and zoning and aerial views for the city. However, we do have some other maps on the walls in City Hall that we use. The last one that we have been using, our zoning map, was last updated in 2014. So we wanted to update that. So over there on the easel there is an updated version of a paper zoning map. Changes are pretty minimal. It's mostly just a higher resolution of the existing map. There were 2 rezonings that were completed in 2016, 2 small parcels that is included in that. The one significant change other than that is the inclusion of the PUD mixed-use overlay district. And this is not the area of Legacy, but is the area where people would be permitted to activate that district and create any new PUD mixed-use projects. We did not have a map of that previously, and so we have gone ahead and added it to the area. Although functionally, this is basically the same as what was in the comprehensive plans that you approved in 2018. It's just a larger version that is easier to see. So you're welcome to take a look at the end of the meeting or whenever, just to make sure. If you have any comments, just let me know and we can make changes before we send this out to the printers.
Is this going to be on the site so I can take a look at it easier someplace? So it's on our website, or?
We can put a copy on the website, but this was mostly a paper map. We would make any changes and then send it as a PDF. But once that's done, we could definitely make it available on the city website. I could email it to you all as a PDF if that's.
Yeah, I'd like to look at it before we approve it. I mean, I can't see anything or understand. I know what you're talking about, roughly understand what you're saying you've done, but
Right. And I wasn't asking, this is just kind of an informational item.
Right.
We're just making a new map, and we wanted to make you aware that we are making a new map. So I don't think any action would be needed by Planning Commission. This is basically the same map that was in the comp plan.
in that case,
The actual zoning. So if I pull up a parcel, this will be a zoning overlay that I can determine this property is located in a B2 zone. Is that correct?
Minus the PUD district, this is exactly what is on our current city GIS map online.
Who is responsible for ensuring that this is continuously updated if you go into the GIS and select a parcel? Can we be, or can the public be sure, is this something they still need to call zoning to reconfirm because of
No, we,
the maintenance issues involved in this, or?
the city assessor is the one who is in charge of updating this. They are the ones who administrate our contract with Geodecisions, who is the one who maintains this map. So if we have any rezonings, we submit it to the city assessor. They forward it to Geodecisions, and that company updates our GIS map for us. But I do know they do update parcel boundary changes and also assessment value changes on a pretty regular basis, several times a year.
Okay, so it's the assessor's position that makes a decision on the information that is available on GIS? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, they're the ones who negotiate. They're our points of contact for the company in charge of updating the map. So we would simply ask them if there are any changes or new things that would be on the zoning map. We would go through them to get it uploaded.
So if there was any other information as an example, other than zoning, which you've done here, we would go to the assessor's office if it was something we wanted to see on the GIS map as an overlay?
Right, you would ask either the assessor or our department, and we would contact the assessor and tell them if you could please submit this information, this new data on to get it updated on our zoning map.
the one change that you're making there, which looks like a potential PUD, is what I heard. What was it before?
Well, it's been a feature of our maps. It's been in existence since 2015, I think. It's just
We never had it on the maps.
we've never had it on our paper maps, and it's not on our online GIS
So it
map.
wasn't like residential, or wasn't in any?
Right, it's an overlay district for the big woods.
I mean, it overlays mostly R&D, a little bit of.
Accurate, up to date.
Okay. We'll see it when it comes back.
Good job. Well, I think that's important to have on your
Absolutely.
GIS. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
GIS is such a robust system now that
Right.
the public relies on so heavily, and
Yeah.
knowing that it's not foolproof and not totally accurate, there's so much information that can be populated on the GIS map, and I find sometimes that the city lags behind some other areas in the data that's populated, and that's why I was asking the question.
Right, because we don't have our own GIS department and we have to go through a company, their updates are a little bit slower. But in any case, we wanted to have at least a paper copy of the map that we could show people that is as up to date as we can make it.
Thank you.
One more question. When are you going to intend to put this out on the GIS? Or does that go through Geo, whoever? I mean, are you anticipating to be 2 months down the road before it actually gets on the GIS system, or?
No, this would be separate from, this is just a paper map. We would just be having this printed and probably on the walls within a week or two. Updating the GIS online is a separate thing. And as far as I know, it's mostly up to date. I know our zonings and our parcel boundaries should be up to date.
So you think that's, the zoning's already up to date on the GIS website?
I believe so, yes.
Oh, okay, perfect, I got
Would
you.
it be up to date in order for you to generate the map? Is the source of this GIS data?
It's local copies of the same data, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, and lastly, we have communications and correspondence. Is there, Dannon, anything you would like to say?
Yes, well, as I mentioned when I was sending out the packets, this is probably my last planning commission meeting for the city of Pocosin. I have accepted a position as a senior planner for the city of Charlottesville. So I will be moving there at the end of the month. So my last day in Pocosin will be April 30th. If there's anything you need from me, just let me know. I can help you out till then, but I wanted to thank you all. It was very great working with you for the past 5 years. I learned a great deal, and I'll always be grateful to the city of Pocosin for basically starting my career in city planning, especially those of you who were here when I started. Bonnie, Lee, and Angie, thank you very much for the experience of working with you, with working through the comp plan. I learned a great work working with you. Thank you.
Things like gave you the comp plan to staff, so I just certainly were able to swim through that. It was, I think, a learning dynamic job, and under the circumstances, being your first job, it was just great. So thank you, Dana.
And I'm totally impressed that the job you're taking. So you must have learned a lot here for them to. That's quite an impressive position. I think you'll do just fine. We'll certainly miss you, though. We've enjoyed. I know I've personally enjoyed you being in our department, because you certainly have brought a lot to it. We really appreciate it, but wish you the very best of luck.
I concur, and you've made our mark on the comprehensive plan, and I'm so grateful that you did. I think you've done a great job, especially on that comp plan, and I think you've received a lot of commendation, at least from this body, and we're sad to see you go. I'm excited for you. It's gonna be a whole new world, but we are sad to see you go. Wally?
Dannon claims he's going to visit us. I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it, but anyway.
Position been advertised or getting ready to be advertised?
Well, I was just getting to that. We've advertised one administrative assistant position, which was made open when Aaron became our environmental compliance officer. And so we're looking to make a decision on that. We've pretty much already made a decision. We just need to send out an offer letter, get that back. As far as the Dannon's position, the advertisement period runs out this Friday. Right now, we only have one applicant.
Really?
Yeah, right now, as of tonight. Anyway, so we'll see what happens between now and Friday, if any. Wanted to also let you know that Tanya is our new assistant city manager.
Who?
Tanya O'Connell, our current finance director.
Oh, okay.
She is yeah, their relation, yeah. Otherwise, Dan would probably get a promotion.
Oh, yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But anyway, she's our new assistant city manager. And the CCIP that you guys recommended for approval got approved by the city council this month. So that's about all I got. What am I leaving out? Anything?
Anything upcoming on upcoming agendas?
Upcoming agendas, not that I know of right off. We'll continue our discussion about planning and development, but I don't think we're ready to make any kind of kind of big changes on that yet. We'll discuss that some more. I'm not aware of any other applications that are coming through right now. So we'll just sort of see. I will tell you that Legacy, they were almost about ready to break ground. We had a pre-construction meeting with the body, but they've got some issues with their piping coming in on the main entrance. Basically, it's delayed in coming. So I don't know when they're going to get started. They might have to amend their E&S plan to do something. But anyway, we'll keep you informed on that. CVS is going in though. We approved CVS plans. We had a pre-construction meeting with them, and I expect them about any day to start demoing that old BB&T building. And
What's gonna happen to the old vault? Any idea?
that's going to be a chore right there. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but that's going to be probably the hardest part of the demo altogether. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with it.
I was just curious.
Kevin?
No, nothing. Appreciate everyone's work. Hope you're a University of Virginia guy.
I mean, technically I am.
Oh, there you go.
But,
Technically.
Well done, thanks.
Thomas? Nothing?
Wally, the intersection when the bank closed on the other side, I guess we've got the ATM that's working right now.
Yes.
Who owns the sign that's right on the corner of West Creek and it's covered over when the bank closed?
Well, is that the BB&T bank?
No, the other side, the bank on the other side.
Wells Fargo?
Oh, the Wells Fargo, Wells Fargo bank.
Right. So that corner parcel, Wells Fargo had their sign and now they've closed.
Right.
Who owns that property? I mean,
I believe Wells Fargo owns part of that, or it's like a management company. I don't remember the name of it right off, but
because that's sort of like a main door,
Yeah.
a front door coming
Right.
into town, and I just,
sure.
I cringe to see an abandoned sign right there.
Is that separate from the office building, the dental building?
It is. I mean,
So is that a condominium there, or because Wells Fargo wouldn't own on the other side, right?
But the dentist, I think,
Yeah.
the dentist went in and did a beautiful job.
The
of
dentist
refurbishing.
has his own property.
But it's,
Right.
But
But that
it's-
corner, would that be Wells Fargo?
Well, the old bank is Wells Fargo, yeah.
Didn't the bank on the other side of the dentist? From the sign?
The building was on the other side of the dentist, but the sign for Wells Fargo was actually at that
Well, that's what I was
intersection.
wondering.
Yeah.
I guess we could pull it up on GIS and see who owns it.
it is weird, and I would recommend you do that because they cut the property in a very strange way.
Very strange.
But I think the sign is on the Wells Fargo,
Okay.
the former Wells Fargo.
But it's really overgrown now, and it's.
Yeah, it's sort of just laying there, kind of going
Is there
back to
some
nature.
ordinance as far as maintenance of property in terms of weeds and overgrowth and
There
shrubbery?
is for residential proproperties.
But not on commercial?
Well, commercial, it's kind of hard to hold anybody responsible for it at this point, but,
Well, I just happened in my travels around recently where there are a couple of places that I thought, I'm surprised that the city hasn't been in contact with these folks, but, so I wondered perhaps there was no ordinance for it. It was commercial, actually.
yeah, there may not be. I'd have to look for commercial.
But I'm saying if there is no ordinance, there's really nothing you can do with Wells Fargo sign covered up and growing up, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Not at this point. I mean, we had the signs out at the Kentucky Hut for years, basically, so, yeah. Hopefully it won't be there that long, but, yeah.
No. Good luck, Shannon. Good luck.
else?
I'm good.
Okay.
Good luck.
Bonnie? I don't have anything else either. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting, and everyone have a great day.
When is our next meeting?